Everybody, welcome into Bet-Sided Best Bets. We are back on a Tuesday going through some of our favorites on the college basketball slate. So we'll go through some of our favorite bets of the day and then do the old circle back around and go through a few teams, maybe some dark horses that we like, not just to compete in the NCAA tournament, but make it all the way to the Final Four at plus 1,500 or greater. Ben Heisler, Peter Dewey, Reed Wallach, good to see you guys. No Ian McMillan or Donovan Smoot on the program today. But before we get started, I just have to ask Reed, because he just came back from the All-Star Game festivities in Cleveland. I need to know, like, of all the different things that you saw, what was like the best part about being amongst all the stars? Was it all the parties that you were attending? Was it shaking hands and rubbing elbows with all of your favorite Brooklyn Nets? Like what stood out to you from all the festivities?
Yeah, well, first it was really cold in Cleveland. It was bar none the coldest. New York's pretty cold. I went to school in Madison, Wisconsin. It was pretty cold. Cleveland, it was pretty much below zero the first 2 days I was there. Yeah, it was brutal. Not an outside type of weekend where you want to walk around the beautiful city of Cleveland. But that being said, Sunday's game was actually, I was there, so you guys can maybe speak a little bit to it from the TV experience. But I'm an NBA junkie. I love the history of the game. Seeing the honoring of all the top 75 at halftime, and then obviously Steph going for 16 threes, literally just heaving the ball in. It was absolutely insane. The crowd was really into it. I thought it was one of the best All-Star games, at least in recent memory, I thought, because sometimes the games are kind of just duds. It going down to the wire, I thought was awesome. But in a cold weekend with kind of an underwhelming dunk contest, the All-Star game definitely takes the cake for being the crown jewel of the weekend. But I had a great time nonetheless.
Dude, 100%. I said on Bet and Breakfast yesterday, that was one of the best All-Star games I have like in recent memory of just like how great a game it was. And like the Elam ending is kind of awesome in that sense.
Agreed.
Because like the fourth quarter was great. Like I think they found the perfect balance. Like you get other All-Star games like the Pro Bowl is just like a joke. Nobody's trying, but like you get the 3 quarters of like everybody trying to do crazy dunks, hit crazy shots, the showmanship, like you get that whole aspect of it, which is really what you want to see. And then the fourth quarter, I forgot who it was who said it on the broadcast, but it is the best pickup game in the history of like basketball. Like it's the best pickup game you're going to get. It's just like, who's going to get to this number first? You get the great defense, like Giannis pinning Chris Middleton shot. You would have thought it was the NBA Finals, how hard some of those guys were going in the fourth quarter. Like it was awesome. And just like you said, the history at halftime, like just an unbelievably cool moment to have that much like basketball royalty on the floor at one time. It was really, really cool. I did like the game itself, I think made up for in my opinion, made up for the dunk contest being terrible. Like I thought it was head and shoulders above what I could have asked for on Sunday.
And I heard you talk about this on Monday's Bet and Breakfast too, Peter. And I love this idea. I just wanted to try and sort of work through it a little bit, because you'd mentioned the idea of like, okay, what would happen if, and correct me if I'm wrong, it was after you have an initial overtime in the NBA, the second overtime would go to the Elam rule or the Elam ending. And I wonder if that could like also work in college basketball too. Like you have it and then it gets to that number. So at some point it finishes up. But why stop there? Why not just have an Elam ending in the regular season for college basketball as your overtime? Like I think there's something there, and I don't know if like the traditionalists would just completely lose it. And I wonder how it would impact the betting market, but man,
yeah,
like I think there's be more strategy involved in it.
I feel like the traditionalists would hate it. I just think college basketball, I think, is a little tougher. NBA, I just think the grind of an 82-game season, you're asking these guys to play 82 games, like to have an overtime game in the middle of January that maybe goes 2 and 3 overtimes, it's just not worth it for the safety and the health of players and just the entirety of the season. Like, and I mean, I was at the Knicks season opener that went double overtime against the Celtics. That's probably freshest legs you're probably going to get out of guys. That second overtime was terrible. I don't think anybody scored for 3 minutes at one point. Like it was just horrible shots. Guys were just tired. I just don't think it's necessary. I would almost be in favor if they wanted to do 1st to 10 when we get to overtime, just for regular season games, never in the playoffs, but just for regular season games, and just say, hey, this is what we're going to do. Like, I wouldn't hate it. I think it would make the intrigue of overtime a little bit better, and I think it's better for the players, honestly.
No, I'm pretty anti like actually putting like I love the Elam ending, but I'm pretty anti actually making it in games that matter. Like I think it's awesome for the TBT. I think it's awesome for the All-Star game. If they go through with this midseason tournament, I imagine this will be involved because it is cool. It made the All-Star game a lot more fun that it had a like we're playing a 163 and that's how we're going to do it. Can't have real games like that. That's where I draw the line. As much fun as the NBA has changing up their All-Star weekend a lot, I'm kind of against a lot of their changes. I think stick to what it is. Like I kind of miss the Eastern Conference, Western Conference thing. That's just kind of me. Again, I'm a traditionalist. I like kind of the cycle of things and how they stay the same in the NBA. Kind of changed it a little too much for my liking. That being said, I do like the Elam ending for the All-Star game. Can't touch regular season. That's when I would get some real grapes. I don't think they're really considering it though. That's radical in my opinion.
I don't think they are either, but
like look at baseball. Baseball, I think, is the closest sport that would really adopt something this radical because the games could go for like 6 hours. Basketball, typically you get your double overtimes, but very rarely are you getting 3 or 4. Like baseball, you see 18 innings and then they start with the second runner on second rule. They seem closer, and I still don't like that's. I still think that they're never going to adopt something this radical.
All right, I'll just say this, sort of in the defense of making the argument for it, and we still have.
And I like the Elam ending. I just think for like real games,
completely understand.
Yeah.
Like I'm not going to come out here and be like, well, Reed, you don't it's like the idea of evolving the sport. Like, it's a wild idea. I was just intrigued by it, and I will say, if we're talking about it like being mattering in the regular season, you have a wacky, wild ending to college football, which you could make the argument that every game matters more than any other sport amongst the big sports in North America right now. So if college football can get wacky and make you do a 2-point conversion after the second overtime, then there's rationale to go and dive into something like this, especially if you're actually talking about player safety and trying to get out of second or like you wouldn't do this in conference tournaments. You wouldn't do this in the NCAA tournament, but regular season, I think there's now a bit of a precedent to at least, I don't know.
The door's definitely open. Just
Yes.
me personally, I would be very angry, and you'd see a lot of really frustrated tweets from me. Like I would go berserk.
That I believe. The tweet storm that would follow the NCAA's decision to put
the amount of memes and gifs I throw out.
No doubt about it. But certainly some fodder over the course of the week, especially with a great ending to the NBA All-Star game. Let's dive into best bets. We got some fun games on the slate today. Peter, I'm actually going to kick things off with you. You're looking at some fun in the Mountain West. UNLV getting hot right about now, and they're on the road at Nevada. Plus 2.5 for the Running Rebels going up against the Wolfpack. Who do you like here?
Yeah, I got to shout out our writer, Joe Summers, for this one. He actually is on UNLV on the money line. I'm not that bold, but I think they can cover in this game. You look at UNLV, last 7 games, 6-1 against the spread. And they've gotten, like you said, Ben, they've gotten really hot. They're covering by an average of 17.5 points in those games. That's absolutely insane for a 7-game stretch. You look at Nevada this year, just 8-17 against the spread on the season. They were in a stretch where they were 3-11 against the spread just a few games ago before they played San Jose State, who's the worst team in the conference. UNLV already beat Nevada this year at home by 11 points. I can't get to this number for Nevada. I honestly thought that this was a chance that maybe UNLV's favored on the road. So I will love getting the points for them here. They're top 100 in a couple of key defensive numbers, including opponent points per game, opponent effective field goal percentage, and possessions per game. So if UNLV can kind of slow this thing down, I'm not really sure how Nevada is going to be able to stay in this. I just don't think they're really that good of a team when you look at their full body of work this season. So I'll definitely take the points on the road for a team that's as hot as UNLV is.
Yeah, I was dead wrong about this Nevada team. Steve Alford kind of fading back to his old habits. But I was looking at this game. I ended up staying off of Nevada, staying off of UNLV, because in the first game, Nevada didn't have Grant Sherfield, who is back from injury, and he's playing pretty well. And they also were without Warren Washington, their big man. So he still might be out. Nevada's playing really well. Bryce Hamilton's probably the best player on the floor, UNLV star guard. I don't know. Revenge spot kind of kept me off it, but I don't hate the look at all. I definitely think that they're live to win this game. UNLV's playing awesome lately.
Yeah, Go
it's
ahead,
a
dude.
tough, it's a tough, I could see it as a letdown spot for UNLV, but at the same time, I'm like, do I want to not bet against them in this spot when they're playing this well? Like, it's one of those where it's like, it's a toss up and you got to kind of find where you think you're going to lean. I feel like this is the right side, but like we know in college basketball, it could go either way.
100%. UNLV is definitely a team. I mean, the Mountain West, I've spoken a ton about them the past few weeks. They're probably my favorite conference, especially come tournament time. I'm going to be betting on pretty much, obviously matchup dependent, but I'm looking to bet on all of them. I'm hoping they get favorable draws come tournament time. But UNLV is a dark horse in this Mountain West tournament. You see a team like Boise State. They're definitely going to be in. Colorado State's pretty much in. San Diego State's pretty much in. Wyoming pretty much in. Those four, they could get bounced early from the Mountain West tournament in a few weeks by UNLV if they aren't taken it seriously. That tournament, I know this is forward thinking, but good time to bring it up. It's in the Thomas and Mack. That's UNLV's home stadium. So if teams are overlooking UNLV, they're going to get bounced early. So I might actually be rooting for them to drop a few games. Obviously rooting for you, and maybe they'll cover, but maybe take teams off the scent of this rising running Rebels team, so we get a better price on them in the Mountain West tournament because it's home games for them. They're playing at home.
Yeah, I will also be rooting for your bet, Peter, because I love betting against Steve Alford whenever I can. As someone who went to Indiana and someone who's just never been a Steve Alford fan, even with his connection to IU. The only thing that concerns me is that it just feels like a trap line a little bit, right? Yeah. Because UNLV beat down Colorado State over the weekend. They've swept them, and Colorado State's a good team this year. I'm going to be talking about them just in a little bit. But you look at that line coming off, and then just trying to figure out like what's going on here? Why are you getting 2.5 with them? But I think especially the way that they've been playing of late, they limited Colorado State to 23% from the 3-point line in the game that they played the other day. So defense has looked really good. They're starting to get into a better rhythm offensively. Hard to dislike this pick, especially when you can get some points on them on the road. Reed, I'm going to go to you next because the team that you're picking against, you have Arkansas -1 against Florida, and I'm not trying to steal your thunder here, but Florida had a big win over the weekend at home against Auburn, and I was on Florida money line in that game. That ended up coming through for me. Why Arkansas now? Is it more of them playing well, or is it more of Florida potentially being in a letdown spot and being a short favorite at home?
This is more matchup dependent. I guess it's a letdown spot. Arkansas also got a big win against Tennessee. I mean, they can't do any wrong. They're winners of 11 of 12. I don't want to spoil it. I will be talking about Arkansas in an upcoming segment. But that being said, this was a team I loved last year. I had tickets on them to go to the Final Four. They have, of course, lost to Baylor in the Elite Eight. But it seems like this is a thing with Eric Musselman's teams. Back when he was coaching Nevada, which we just spoke about, now at Arkansas Elite Eight, they're starting to round into form. And I just think that this is a good matchup for them. Listen, they beat Auburn, but Auburn's actually 10th in SEC play in generating turnovers. Arkansas's 3rd. They are great at turning their opponent over. And Florida, they can't handle ball pressure. Not to mention Arkansas, they have the size inside to challenge Colin Castleton, who was big against Auburn. He kind of matched up with Walker Kessler. Arkansas is an elite on both ends, rebounding. They get inside. Neither team could shoot really, but Arkansas knows they can't shoot. They're really they always drive to the basket. They have a great guard in J.D. Notae. Florida, more than 51% of their shots come from beyond the arc. So they have no ball handling to get inside against the Arkansas length. They're going to be chucking from 3. I'm going to bank on them being the poor 3-point shooting team they are. They're shooting under 30% in conference play. Woo pig. I just think that this team is really rounding into form, and I think they get it done tonight. I wrote about it on Best Bets. I kind of gave away the whole handicap, but make sure you check that out for more. But yeah, this is just a great matchup for the Hogs.
If you go all the way back to January 8th, that was the first real time that they struggle. There was a 3-game stretch, a 3-game losing streak against Mississippi State, where they lost by 13, then a 1-point loss to Vanderbilt, and then a 5-point loss to Texas A&M. And then after that, they reeled off 9 straight. And then their only other loss in conference play was a 1-point loss against Alabama.
A game they should have won. I watched the entire game. I wouldn't say they should have won, but Notae, who's their leading scorer, he's, I believe, 2nd in the SEC right now in scoring. He got into foul trouble early, and Musselman sat him the entire first half, kind of threw him off. And they still nearly won. They had a half-court shot at the buzzer.
The thing that stands out to me about Arkansas is that if you think of them from, a season ago, like they were a solid offensive team. Like that's how we always thought about Eric Musselman's teams at Nevada, right? Like good pace, get a lot of points. I think the Martin brothers were there, if I'm not mistaken, before they ended up transferring.
Yep.
And now they're 12th in adjusted defensive efficiency over at KenPom. So like it's cool to see a team that you would think has one identity then move into a completely different place, embrace those other strengths, and now become a really elite defensive team in the country.
I think you look at this Arkansas team, you just look at the SEC in general too. Like there's so many good teams in the SEC where like that conference tournament is going to be absolutely nuts. Like I'm not really sure who's going to come out of it because like you think Kentucky, Auburn, probably the class of the conference, but like we've seen both of those teams lose games in conference play that you're like, oh wow, they lost that game. Like Tennessee's really good, Arkansas is really good, Florida can beat people. Like it's going to be a crazy, crazy conference tournament. And like Arkansas has put themselves in a position where like now I feel like if they can come away with a win in the conference tournament, like how high of a seed can they really get at this point? Like they've won enough games where it's like, yeah, you win the SEC, you probably deserve a top 3 or 4 seed. So it's going to be very interesting.
Yeah. So Arkansas, and again, we're going to talk about them in the next segment, but right now
we're just here to steal all of your thunder with Arkansas.
No. I mean, I'm the one leading that discussion, but they do play just in relevance of this game because, of course, I'm trying to, handicap these games. I try to think what's the wrong side. Why am I wrong in my analysis? They did just come off this big grind of a win against Tennessee. It was a great defensive team, and they play Kentucky on Saturday, their next game. So this is a sandwich spot. I still think matchup-wise with Jalen Williams inside and Note on the perimeter, I just trust Arkansas's offense a little bit more. I know that that's the side that they're lacking on, and we just discussed how good their defense is. But again, I am going in noting that this is a potential letdown or a potential sandwich spot. But I don't know. I just think that this Arkansas team is a cut above this Florida team. Florida, they're probably not going to make the tournament. Maybe they could go on a run, but I don't love their coach, Mike White. I don't love their ball handling. I'm going to just close with, I still like Arkansas. I think they win this one by a possession or two.
All right. Peter brought this up, and before I dive into my favorite play of the night, I'm curious to just throw this toss up to you guys. Deepest conference in college basketball. Is it the SEC? Is it the Big Ten? Can we make an argument that the Mountain West should be considered based off the amount of high quality teams like 1 through 5, maybe even 1 through 6? Where are we looking at as far as like the deepest conference right now in college basketball? Reed, I can start with you on this one.
Yeah, I think it's definitely the SEC. I've been saying that all year. The Big Ten, a lot of just like good, maybe like fraudulent teams. Like you look at the middle of the SEC, like Bama could beat anyone. I mean, Bama, I don't even know how good they are, but they have beaten Gonzaga, Baylor, and Houston already this year. So that's pretty, that's like 3 of the best wins you could possibly get in a season. You, of course, have Auburn and Kentucky. You have this Arkansas team, Tennessee. Compared to the Big Ten, for example, like how good is Iowa? Michigan State, I think, is fraudulent. Ohio State, I think, is going to get bounced in the first round again. Indiana, Ben, I'm sorry. They're probably not going to make the tournament. I went to Wisconsin. We're a one-man team. We discussed this last week.
Yeah.
Purdue, I think, is fraudulent, and they have the best offense in the country. I think Illinois is maybe the best team. Michigan, they've fallen way flat this year. SEC to me, you have like legitimate team. Like you have like 5 or 6 teams that could actually find themselves in the second weekend if things break right for them. So I definitely will go with the SEC. But shout out to Mountain West. Way to give some respect there, Ben.
Yeah, you try. What about you, Peter?
I gotta say SEC too. I just think they have too many teams that like if you told me I had to pick the conference that the NCAA champion was going to come out, I'd be like, okay, my best chance is the SEC because there's probably like 3 or 4 teams in there that I would legitimately consider betting on to win the whole thing. I just think like Reed made a really good point with the Big Ten. Like there's good teams in there, but there's also huge flaws with those teams. Like, there's flaws with everybody, but like some of the top teams in the SEC, it's a lot harder to poke a hole in their case in terms of like where they can go in the tournament. So I would go with them. But I think the other conference we're going to talk about this in the future section a little bit. I think the Big East is really, really good this year. I think it is extremely deep. And people like you don't like Nova is probably the top team. Providence is really good. But I think there's like a legitimate 6-7 teams in the Big East where you're like, they can kind of beat anybody on any night. And that makes it very scary. So that would be my honorable mention, but I'll go SEC is the best.
The Big East is a really intriguing pick. And by the way, if we're going to be talking about some of our favorite Final Four teams that are dark horses, one team that neither of us picked, and I might be slightly regretting this, UConn's plus 1,500 to go to the Final Four. And they're the number 17 over at KenPom, top 25 in both offense and defense this year. They've played and won a lot of really close games. They're just a really strong team. I probably would rank them maybe number 2 or number 3 after Villanova. And by the way, I know that Providence had a big comeback win against Butler, and I was able to jump on that at plus 4.5 live, and they ended up pulling off that 1-point win. But metrics do not like Providence at all this year. Like they're just waiting for Ed Cooley's team to I'm trying to think of the appropriate way to use this expression, to slow down when things really start to play up. And that was a terrible way of explaining that. But they look at Providence as a team that's maybe playing a bit above their skis this year. But I think you're right. I think you also make an argument for Big 12. Texas Tech's been doing better than most people thought. Baylor and KU are top 5 teams. Texas has had a really solid season. I think you're starting to see a little bit more improved play in that conference. But you're right. The Big 10, especially after starting off so well, has really started to tail off, especially with a team like Indiana, who continues to find new, exciting ways to let me down as a fan. But conversation for another day.
Yeah, Ben, if I were to say teams set odds on team with the most teams in the second weekend, so win their first 2 games of the tournament, SEC would be the favorite. And then you're looking at something like Big East. I wouldn't put the Big 10 really. I wouldn't put them second. I'd put probably Big 12, I guess, because they'd have higher seeds than Big East.
Mm-hmm.
Then
it's been an up year for the Pac-12 too.
Yeah, I mean, with Arizona, they're gonna, Arizona's likely on track for number 1 seed. UCLA is obviously a contender. The Big 10 they're gonna have a lot of teams in that 4 through 7 range, and guess what? They're gonna draw the Wyomings of the world, or those teams in the Mountain West that I think are really good. And guess what? They're gonna beat them. They're just straight. I went to Wisconsin. I watch a lot of Big 10 basketball. I know that this conference, they cannibalize themselves, and they kind of some teams inflate themselves based on beating similar competition, that when you kind of get some different blood, you're going to get bounced. Your metrics almost get skewed in a certain way that, Iowa's offense is really, really good, and their defense is kind of okay because they play a tough schedule because the other teams are really good. Well, Iowa's defense is actually terrible. So they're probably setting up for another early exit come tournament time if they get the wrong. If they get Colorado State, I'm all over Colorado State, and people will be like, wow, Colorado State's catching 2 against Iowa. What are we doing here? Well, actually, Colorado State should probably be favored by 3. So, but hey, don't worry, we have plenty of March Madness content where we're going to pump out winners. So
that's right.
That's for another day.
Yeah, that's right. And anytime you're hyping up Colorado State, I'm certainly have my eyes and ears open for it. All right, let me give you my best bet of the night. And I know that we had some conversation on Twitter about the game going on between Michigan State and Iowa tonight, which I think will be fascinating because those are 2 teams that like to do very different things. But I'm in the state of Kansas, right outside of Kansas City. K-State and KU. You have sort of 2 intriguing trends kind of going at each other, which I'll get to in a second. But you have the Jayhawks winning 3 straight, and we think of them as a high-flying offense. Ochai Agbaji has been one of the better players in the country. But the last 3 games that KU has won has been all about their defense. Gave up 69 points against Oklahoma, followed it up by giving up 62 against Oklahoma State, and then only 58 against West Virginia on the road. Very hostile environment. There are a lot of upset picks leaning towards West Virginia in that game. And Kansas was outstanding on the defensive side of the ball. You contrast that with K-State, which for whatever reason, they've been really, really good against the spread away from Bramlage. They're 8-2-0 on the road against the spread. That's the best against the spread record amongst Power 5 teams in college basketball. And so I was looking at the matchup and trying to figure out, okay, well, why is that? For whatever reason, they have done a good job on the road of limiting 3-point shots. They're 5th best in all of college basketball in 3-point percentage allowed. They limit quality shots. Opponents have a 47% effective field goal percentage. League average is 50%. And the last time they played KU, it was at K-State. It was in Manhattan. And they let Kansas kind of control the pace. It ended up being a 78-75 win for KU. And even though K-State kept it close, that's not what they like to do. Bruce Weber's teams like to slow things down, create good shots on offense, play tough physical defense. and they just let KU go back and forth on them. And even though K-State made their shots, it wasn't the style of play that's been most effective for them. So the two scenarios that I kind of see in this game is why I like the under is either the Jayhawks just make everything against them and they continue to play really good defense, and K-State just doesn't make shots. They're one of the worst 2-point shooting teams in the country, and they're very mediocre from 3-point range. Or it's a game that they like to play, which is the slow down, more solid time of possession types of games where the pace is a little bit slower and they keep it close against them once again. So I don't see a scenario in which both teams continue to have that up pace tempo, especially the second time around in a rivalry game. So I like the under of 141.5. I think you've even seen it a little bit higher at some books. You might be getting a discount with it over at WinBet. So those are our best bets for today in college basketball. Last week we went 3-2 against the spread, hoping for that to continue. All right, let's bring it back in. Last week we talked about some of our favorite futures bets to win the NCAA tournament on the men's side. Now we're going to zone out a little bit, focus in on some Final Four plays, but more so from a dark horse perspective, teams that are plus 1,500 or 15 to 1 odds or above to make it to the Final Four. So Peter, I'll kick things off with you. Again, you were just talking about the Big East. Perfect opportunity for you to set this one up.
Yeah, I brought up the Big East because I really think when you look at the Big East, my pick is Marquette at plus 1,500. But you look at the Big East between Providence, Villanova, Marquette, Creighton, UConn. I mean, St. John's has played a lot of really, really tough games this year where they've lost to teams that are on paper much better than them, but they've covered or they've kept it close. I think they can make a run in the conference tournament, but I think Marquette is a extremely intriguing team because they played so well against the class of the Big East. They are 2-0 against Villanova. They're 1-1 against Providence. Their loss to Providence was by 2 points on the road. And yeah, they've taken some regression as the season's gone along. They went from a team that was like, wow, Shaka Smart has turned this team into, a contender right away. Like they've definitely come back to earth a little bit. But my big thing with Marquette, they're 7-7 in quad one games this year. So they have proven that they can beat teams that are considered some of the best teams in the country. And going back to the Big East, I think if they can make a run in the Big East tournament, which is very possible considering how they've played against the top part of the conference, if they win the Big East or they get to the title game and they lose to Villanova, say in the title game, something like that, they're going to get a high seed in the tournament, and that is going to help them get a better draw. Obviously, if they get bounced early, now you're putting yourself in that position where you got to get in that large bid, see who else wins. That's the concern here. But I think the way that they've played all year and the way they've played against increased competition puts them in a spot where I think they could win the Big East. They are extremely well shooting the ball. They're 53rd in the country in effective field goal percentage. They're 33rd in opponent effective field goal percentage. So they play both sides of the ball. Justin Lewis is an absolute stud, their star forward. And Daryl Morcell, their transfer from Maryland, veteran guard. I know I talked about it last week. Like, guard play matters. He's a very solid veteran guard. I don't know if Marquette's like a team that is going to be on a lot of people's radars just because of how their season has gone, where it's been up and then down. But I think plus 1,500, it's worth it if they get the right draw.
Yeah, just to help Peter's point out, right now, Bracket Matrix, which great resource, basically compiles like all the best bracketologists out there and just kind of composite ranking per the day. So this was updated yesterday, so not much change, but they have Marquette as the top 7 seed. So of the 4, they are the number 1 7 seed, so pushing 6. And they also finish with an incredibly easy schedule. They're off till Saturday. They get Butler at home. They go to DePaul, who's a mess, and then they're home for St. John's in a game they're likely going to be favored by like 6 points, 5.5. So if they could finish 12-7 in conference play, make a run the Big East tournament, maybe get to 5-6 line. I mean, not terrible. There's worse bets to make out there. I mean, irrelevant to how I think about Marquette in general, I think that this is a solid bet. And again, I talk about, I'm going to write about balance on both sides of the floor, top 50 on both sides of the ball in KenPom. So not a bad look, Pete.
So the 7 seed is really interesting for Marquette because they're a really streaky team, right? Like they have great quality wins against some of the best teams in the country. So if they matched up, say, against Houston or Duke or Auburn, maybe UCLA is in that conversation. Like it wouldn't shock me if Marquette ended up pulling off a 7-2 upset there if they advance out of the first round. But I could also see them fairly, losing easily to a 10 seed as well. It's just, to me, it's very much dependent on how they enter the tournament. If they go out the rest of the season with a bit of a whimper, you're going to get really good value on a team that can beat anybody. But they can also kind of get in their own way a little bit, it seems, this year. But I think from a value perspective, it's a good play at 1,500. What were you saying, Ryan?
Yeah.
No, they take and make a lot of threes. So again, it's a tournament, right? It's like it's all so much variance. Like if you get really hot, they're good on defense. They force a lot of turnovers. They lock up. But like again, they're top 103 point rate. So if they're taking and making their threes, they're gonna probably be live to beat Houston, like you mentioned. So I don't hate the look at all.
The seed is going to dictate this a lot, I think, which is like I'm kind of hedging that they're going to make a run in the Big East tournament. But like as long as they are 7 or better, I think they're in a good spot. 8, 9, you start to get a little bit worried. I don't know if they beat a 1 seed. But like if they can get a 7, you maybe get, if they're like Reed said it, they're the top 7 right now. So if you get the worst 2 in the second round, if that's how it ends up working out, like I like their chances because they can beat anybody. But at the same time, if they get bounced early in the Big East tournament, because as good as the Big East is, like you have a chance there to pick up some real quality wins, or you have a chance to completely kill your case because you lose in the first round because everybody's so good. So that's the risk with it. But since they're at a 7, Reed, good. That's a great find. I really like that because of that.
Yeah, and we're making the argument like, well, if Marquette gets a 7, I mean, so much of this is so much. There's so much variance anyway that like we're just kind of pigeonholing ourselves a little bit. But I do like Marquette, especially if they start to play a little bit better come Big East tournament time. What about for you, Reed? I know you hinted at it a little bit earlier, but go ahead and make that case for Eric Musselman's squad as a Final Four contender.
Yeah, another team just trending up, 11-12, only loss by 1 on the road against an Alabama team that isn't necessarily easy out for anyone. Arkansas is just peaking at the right time. And again, I've been saying, in all these videos, all these articles, it's just, if you're betting these futures in the tournament, just get the best price. Like what's more likely to happen? Is this price going to go up or down? I get Arkansas has a tough schedule to finish, but this team is 6th since conference play started in adjusted efficiency over at Bar Torvik. This team is playing like a top 10 team in the country. You get them at 15-1 just to go to the Final Four. Right now they're on the 6th line, get up to the 5 line, maybe even the 4 line if they get another signature victory starting tonight against Florida, which I think will happen. Again, they have veterans like Jalen Williams and JD Notae. Notae is a scorer of guard play wins in the tournament. But again, Arkansas's defense is going to give a lot of teams trouble, especially on that quick prep the second time around. We're talking round of 32. Their shooting kind of concerns me. But again, this team's playing like a top 10 team. If they keep it up into the tournament, the sky's the limit for this team. I had them last year to go to the Final Four. They ended up losing to Baylor, which nothing wrong with that. But again, if the bracket breaks right for them, this Arkansas team is going to be a real tough out. I gave a ton of info on why I like this Arkansas team in general. But yeah, really that top 10 metric really sticks out to me in conference play in the best conference. So it's not like they're beating up on, poor teams. They're beating up on quality. They beat Auburn already this year. So I think that this team's peaking at the right time, and I see their odds shrinking as the next couple of weeks come up. Just again, I mentioned tough schedule coming up. I just want to bring it up real quick and I'll be done. But they play, sorry, it's loading. They host Kentucky this weekend. They host LSU, and then they're at Tennessee. So that's into the SEC tournament. They're 10-4 in conference play. So we'll see what happens. But I like this Arkansas team a lot. They're experienced, and they've proven they can win in a tournament setting.
If they can pick up a win over that, like a couple wins over these next 3, like now you're really cooking. That number is definitely going to move. This is literally like almost feels like the last chance, because if they win any more of these games, they make a run in the conference tournament. Like there's no way you'll get this at this number ever again.
Yeah, we'll see how healthy Kentucky is going into that game, because if Ty is still hurt, like Arkansas might just win that game again, and then all of a sudden we're talking, okay, can this team get up to like the 3 line? So definitely think that right now is the time to strike with Arkansas, especially because, again, I think win or lose this game tonight, they're a 1-point favorite on the road. It's not like this is a crushing loss to their tournament hopes. They're going to make the tournament. I'm bullish on their future. All
right, so you brought up bracket matrix earlier. Arkansas right now on the 6th seed is the number 2 6 seed. The only one ahead of them is a fellow SEC team in LSU, who also lost over the weekend to South Carolina. That was a game that they were in control of, but then South Carolina made a nice run at the end.
LSU stinks. Well, like, come on. Like, come on.
Good defensive team, but I think I would trust Arkansas.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I agree with you there. But the other 2 6 seeds are Michigan State, who's a 6-point dog against Iowa tonight, and then USC, who's has like a ton of length and athleticism. It's sort of not really.
No. Okay. Like, again, give me Arkansas and USC all day over Michigan State and LSU all day.
Okay. All right. No, I'm with you there as well.
Yeah,
I'm talking
100%.
about just like from a relative perspective on that line. And sometimes too, like there's something about being a 5 seed that I think gets into the head of a lot of these teams. Like there's times you almost rather be a 6 seed, and there's no real rhyme or reason to it other than like, well, a 12 seed always beats a 5 every year, and it's happened fairly consistently. So, I think Arkansas is sitting really, really in a nice spot, and it wouldn't surprise me, especially if they get that win against Kentucky or they make it close. If that line starts to creep up and up and up when it comes to their futures price. So I think right now plus 1,500 is a really good shot for them as well. So I like both of your guys' picks with Marquette and with Arkansas. A lot of upside between both of them. I'm going in a slightly different direction. I'm taking the team that got blown out over the weekend, and that was Colorado State. But they're plus 2,000 for a chance to reach the Final Four. I just look at their overall numbers, and this strikes me as a team that just makes a lot of sense to make a run in March. They're 17th in adjusted offensive efficiency. They're 13th in effective field goal percentage, 9th in turnover percentage. And this is the entire country. We're not just talking about their conference. The other thing that I love about them is that they shoot just under 80% from the free throw line. You have to make free throws in tournament games. It's never been an issue for them. And look at their entire rotation. It is nothing but juniors and a couple seniors mixed in. Like, it's all upperclassmen. It's all played for Coach Medved over the last 3-4 years. And they've beaten good teams this year too. Like their strength of schedule has been fairly decent. I think it's top 80 in the country, but they've beaten St. Mary's. That's a top 20 KenPom team. San Diego State, Utah State, Creighton, Mississippi State, Boise State's all in that mix as well. And I was trying to learn a little bit more about them because I kept on trying to figure out, okay, what do I like about this team? Their best player, David Roddy, he's a 6'5", 250 pound guard. Like, it's just like an absolute bowling ball of a basketball player, just like coming right at you.
He's real good.
Yeah. And the cool thing about him is that he's a mismatch anywhere. So normally you'd think of like big physical guards as just someone that's going to just dominate you inside. And he can do that because he shoots above 57% inside the lane. But from 3-point range, he's also a 46% free throw or 3-point shooter. So like, this is someone that can beat you in a wide variety of ways. He'll have mismatches against other guards, especially come tournament time. And then there's just other guys on the team that can make plays, and they win a ton of close games. Like, some of their losses this year, as I pull up their schedule, like bad loss against UNLV, it was a 21-point loss. They had a bad loss against San Diego State back in the early part of January. That was by 30.
That was off a COVID pause too.
Off the COVID pause. The other game, that again blown out by UNLV by 14, and then a loss to Wyoming in overtime. But a lot of their wins this year have been close games that they have found ways to win. And maybe that doesn't necessarily reflect well against like some really high quality teams, but I think it matters that you know how to win close games in this type of environment, in this type of setting. And part of the reason that they've gotten some of those wins is they know how to get to the free throw line. They don't turn the ball over. They turn the ball over, I think, the 10th fewest times in all of college basketball. They're just a smart, really organized basketball team that knows how to make shots, get to the free throw line. They're not going to make bad mistakes at crucial times with a lot of junior and senior experience.
Yeah, Ben, I know you have kids, but I've been saying you got to stay up and watch FS1 CBS Sports Network on these like weeknights, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock. We got Colorado State, Wyoming, Boise, San Diego State. The Mountain West, they slap. They are awesome. They're literally my most fun conference to watch in the entire country. I love all of them, and every game they play is barn burners. That being said, I'm not super high on Colorado State. I see the path. I just think that there is a way for them to get beat. They're a little small up front. Like, again, all three of these teams probably need some bracket help to actually make the Final Four.
Sure.
That's why 20-1, I don't mind, because I was talking about Colorado State against Iowa in the first round. They should be favored in that game. Like, Colorado State is legit good. So, yeah, I could see them making the second weekend, and then all of a sudden things open up, maybe some variance. They're really, really small in the front court. So, like, if they draw Duke, they might be in some trouble because like Duke could kind of overwhelm you and also throw some throw something at Roddy. But like, if you get the right matchup, again, like you said, Colorado State, they could shoot. And Nico Medved, their coach, is going to be a major power conference coach in the next few years. So I don't hate Colorado State at all. All the points you mentioned were awesome.
All right. By the way, shout out to our guy Cody, who's been checking us out on the stream today. He's talking about David Roddy. He's unique. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was trying to think of like a comp for a guy at that size that can just hit from all over the floor, and nobody comes to mind, at least for me. I'll have to think about that.
Like he's built like Charles Barkley, but like he's not Charles Barkley. He's more of like a finesse Charles Barkley.
That's
you know what I'm saying? Like he doesn't necessarily. He's really good down low, but he's literally like a bowling ball. So
well, Barkley might have had about like 35 pounds on him.
Yeah, exactly. But like
6'6", 280.
Yeah, exactly. But like that's exactly what I see. I mean, Roddy's really, really good. He's the type of guy that goes off in March, and all of a sudden that's all anyone's talking about, even though, that's just for the people catching on to him, or the ones with kids that go to bed early. Us night owls staying up and watching the Mountain West, watching the Mountain West. We know about David Roddy. We're here.
You're right. And that's why we have some incredible insiders and writers and editors at Betside that I can go to as the wash dad of the three of us, who's struggling to stay up at night. We're waking up at 5:30 with a crying baby.
Last point on Colorado State, really, really big close to the season for them. They're home for Wyoming tomorrow. I think they open like 5.5 point favorites, something like that. But then they go to Utah State this weekend. Utah State, a peaking team as well. And they're home for Boise State, who is second in Mountain West standings, I believe, off the top of my head. So big close for them, Mountain West tournament, but they're firmly in the field. So it's not like, of course, if they lose all three, maybe they've played themselves onto the bubble, but Colorado State should be in. And yeah, they're definitely dangerous. 20-1, I don't hate it at all.
Yeah, and Utah State is always one of those teams that gets hyped up every year in the tournament, and they never make it out of the first round. So
they're firmly on the bubble right now. They've had a few really, really bad losses, but again, they can win the Mountain West tournament.
Yeah, it's very much up for grabs. I'll
have eyes on Vegas the entire week for the Mountain West tournament.
All right, so let's make a deal right here, because the three of us do bet and breakfast on Mondays. I am going to pick a day this Saturday night. I'm going to stay up, watch plenty of Mountain West action, and then I will report back on Monday, very sleepy at 6 a.m. Central Time, telling you about everything I learned from the Mountain West.
If we had a Mountain West only bet and breakfast, that would be just music to my ears. Nothing would make me more thrilled. I would be over the moon.
Anybody that's a Mountain West fan that wants to get up at 5 or 4 a.m. to come have bet and breakfast with us, we are here for you. But of course, you can always join us a little bit later and watch us, not necessarily in real time, but on demand. If you guys love any of the college basketball information that we've been putting out, and guys like Reader and Pete and Reader and Pete. I just combined your two names together because I'm tired. Guys like Reed and Peter and Ian and Joe and Matt and the rest of the crew that have been doing such an awesome job for us over at Betside. Make sure you guys check out their work. Some of us can occasionally get lucky. I went 8-0 against the spread on Friday betting on the Ivy League. So when you're hot, and you just have a lot of fun with it. But we certainly enjoy all of you guys being a part of what we're doing here over at Betside, and plenty more content over the weeks ahead leading you up to March Madness. So for my guys, Peter and Reed, I am Ben. May all of your bets hit tonight, as well as your futures in the future. We'll talk to you guys soon.